Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, good whatever time it is, wherever you happen to be. Welcome once again to Anime Octane, the show in which we talk about usually a recent piece of anime entertainment, sometimes larger topics within the anime sphere. But tonight we are specifically talking about one recent piece of anime, and that is the movie Bubble. So if you have not seen this movie and you hate spoilers, you should probably not be watching this until after you've seen the movie. If you have seen the movie and or you don't mind spoilers, then absolutely hang around, jump into the chat, let us know what you think, let us know what you think of my opinion on all of this, and we'll have a good time. Who am I? I am Rodney Brown, the editor-in-chief of Nerd Caliber, first-person shooter on Facebook and Instagram as a cosplay photographer. Ivan says I can't tell him what to do. I can make strong suggestions, Ivan. But anyway, and Burley_adopter on Twitter and a couple of other places doing a few other things. And pardon me while I adjust my mic. I was house sitting for the last week, so most of the shows last week were on a completely different setup, a laptop, and and so on. So got to get things settled, tuned back in, back here at the homestead. So before we get into exactly what Bubble is, let me give you our little promo, our first one, and that is ask you to follow us on Twitch. If you have a Twitch account, we'd love to have you go to that URL, twitch.tv/nerdcaliber on your screen right now, and give us a follow. We're looking to grow our following there. We have a fantastic following on Facebook. Thank you, Ivan, for commenting on Facebook and on YouTube. And we just want to get Twitch up in that level or close to it. So twitch.tv/nerdcaliber. If you have a Twitch account, please do check us out. So what is Bubble? Bubble is an anime movie that released on Netflix April 6th of this year, produced by Warner Brothers Japan, created by Wit Studio, the amazing Wit Studio, that tells the story of a alternate near future, one assumes, in Japan, in which I'm trying to think how to describe this. Basically, bubbles, they call it the bubble fall. Bubbles of something, which look like soapy water bubbles, fall from the sky, and there's an interaction, and the Tokyo Tower explodes, which engulfs that part, Lol King, welcome to the show, which engulfs that part of Tokyo. So the area surrounding the tower in a bubble large enough to actually also encompass a lot of downtown Tokyo, so big skyscrapers and so on. The bubble fall, once the bubbles sort of swirl and float, they actually start falling, and once they hit the ground, they release water, because they're water bubbles. And there's enough of them that they essentially flood much of the world. About the equivalent of what people have predicted, with like a 6 foot, not a 6 foot, a 6 meter, like every bit of ice on the planet melting, climate change, water rise. So much of Tokyo inside that bubble and out is flooded. The bubbles themselves, the ones that remain, they describe it as a mix of weird and chaotic properties. Pretty much what it is they negate gravity. It's not anti-gravity in that, like, anti-gravity would repel a gravity well, so everything would just go off into space. It negates it, so things just sort of float. And things that encounter these bubbles or anything that's been infected or affected by them that they can pass through takes on that property. You can interact with the bubbles by like bouncing off the surface if you don't break it, and that nothing happens to you. But if you break it and somehow pass through it, or if anything does, it will become essentially 0G within a gravity well. It'll just float. So chunks of pavement and gravel and lawn and buildings also are sort of floating around in the sky. The story centers on the main character Hibiki. You know what? I always do this. So this is the bubble, and this is an image from the teaser. Gravity is broken. Leap as you like. The leap comes from the idea that Hibiki, who is this dude here, is one of a number of orphans who have gone from outside Tokyo back into the bubble, where they all participate in this game called Battle Parkour. And it's crazy parkour that runs along the ruins of buildings and cranes and trains and everything else that they can jump around and across and over. And the best of them, like Hibiki, also use the bubbles and any of the floating debris as part of their parkour. He makes a mistake, and while he thinks he's going to drown, he winds up meeting and getting saved by this character, this young woman, who doesn't speak anything initially, so he gives her the name Uta, which means song, because you can see here she's actually singing a song. And the story basically revolves, and this is a good example of what it looks like. You can see the Tokyo Tower in the distance there with the sort of reddish glow around the middle of it where the initial explosion happened, and all the water in the streets. And it's been a number of years, so things are growing up all around. There is vegetation growing on the remains of the skyscrapers and so on. So the story basically tells of Hibiki and Uta coming together as essentially two young people who fall in love. And it also connects to what has happened to the world in particular, or in general, but Tokyo in particular, and whether or not that will ever get better or change or so on. Trying to keep things a little generic and not very spoilery in the early parts of the show, like I usually do. So this movie is made by, like I said, Wit Studio, and it uses an awful lot of the people from Wit Studio when they were doing Attack on Titan. So it includes, I'm going to get these names right here. So the producer is Tetsuya Nakatake. The director is Araki Tetsuro. The sound director, Masafumi Mima, and a lot of the music done by Hiroyuki Sawano, who, did almost all of the music for, Wit Studios' run in Attack on Titan. Those are all Attack on Titan people. It's written by one of my absolutely favorite writers of, all kinds of anime, but specifically for me, science fiction anime. And that is Urobuchi Gen. Gen's, or Urobuchi-san, I don't want to be, informal, curriculum vitae includes going all the way back to, wrote all of the stories for every episode of Blast Rider, created the series, and wrote the screenplay for almost all of the episodes of the very first Madoka Magica. Wrote the novels that the Fate Zero anime is based on. Wrote one of my absolute favorite science fiction animes, Gargantia on the Verdurous Planet. Wrote the first season of which is one of my favorite science fiction animes, Aldnoah Zero. Actually, he only wrote 12 episodes, so I'm assuming he wrote the first 12. The second core, I guess, it's only one season, so the second core, meh. And wrote Psychopass. So, yeah. And then wrote the Godzilla CGI movies from like 2017 to 2018, so Godzilla Planet of the Monsters and its two sequels, so, yeah. still batting 750 or 800 or something like that. I mean, just, absolutely fantastic work. On the strength of Madoka Magica alone, this guy should be considered a god. Then Psychopass, that's it. He is a god. The director, Araki Tetsuro, directed, like I said, almost every episode of Attack on Titan that Wit Studio did up until 2019. Kabaneri of the Iron Fortress, going back, started directing a few episodes of Black Lagoon, directed 17 and was series director on 20 episodes of Death Note, and High School of the Dead, which doesn't strike me as a directorial masterpiece, but hey. So the people behind this are amazing. So what did I think of the movie itself? What was good about it? What worked? What did I like most about it? So one of the things that I liked most about it is the art and the look of it. Again, go back to this image here. That kind of detailed, distant artwork is in every frame. When it's a close-up of like water droplets falling on flowers, the flowers and the leaves and the water droplets and everything else is just as detailed and well realized as you can imagine. The animation, and this is going to be really tough, obviously, to show in static images, but here's the scene of Hibiki and Uta basically jumping around, doing their parkour, at this point on nothing but bubbles and floating chunks of ground. And the animation is fluid. The parkour is absolutely exciting. It's clear that Wit uses an awful lot of CG to use the camera movements. There's no way that hand-drawn 2D animation can do the kind of camera movements that are being done here. And they're probably using CG to do things like composite so many different layers, in a particular frame. You've got the background, you've got the water moving in the background, you've got the things floating in the sky, you've got Uta running in one direction, you've got Hibiki jumping in another direction. So I'm sure they're using CG to composite all of that, but none of it ever looks like CG except because you understand that cameras can't move like that in 2D. So it is some of the smoothest integration of beautifully detailed 2D hand-drawn animation with CG compositing and camera work, cinematography, if you will. Which is actually what they call it, even though it's not really... you don't have a camera operator framing people. You have I'm not sure who the compositor or whoever, an editor and whoever drew the storyboards, writing programs that make things move the way they do. So I think it's absolutely gorgeous. It is beautiful to look at. It's incredibly exciting. The music is thrilling. The character designs are basic but very good. You've got, like I said, Hibiki looks, pretty straightforward, young, typical slender, heroic kind of guy. Uta's design is really pretty, but not sort of anime exaggerated or sexualized. It's a really interesting look. Her skirt is kind of tattered and in pieces, but she's wearing black athletic Spanx underneath them. So it's a good look. Here's some of the other members of Blue Blaze. Actually, that's all the members of the Blue Blaze. The parkour team, the battle parkour team that Hibiki is on. He's not the leader. He's their ace. The leader is the guy with the long red hair in the background and the bandana. I thought I had a picture of their enemies, but I guess I don't. So the character designs are fairly simplistic, but pretty cool. The animation and the portrayal of the bubbles themselves, it's almost, at times it becomes so overwhelming that you think it's like, Wit Studio figured out how to make iridescent, what looks like iridescent soap bubble water bubbles in CG and make it integrate beautifully with 2D animation, and so they decided, let's make a movie around that. I'm sure that's not what the case is. Again, with, Urobuchi again writing it, I'm sure, he had an idea and then wrote a story, and then they went, hey, we can do this stuff with our CG. But at times it's just so in your face that you go, yeah, I get it. You do really amazing bubbles now. Good job. Let's see, what else do I particularly like about it? The voice acting is good. Nothing particularly outstanding. Anything else that really, really stands out? That's pretty much it. The directing is solid, both in the slower moments. The pacing is really well done. I would argue too fast. It's an hour and 40-something minutes. An hour and 44 or something like that. And I think it could have easily been a 2-hour movie, which would have let Urobuchi expand on some of the ideas that are in here. It's packed with ideas, like everything he writes is, if you've got 13 episodes like Gargantua on the Verdurous Planet, you can explore those story ideas, which is one of the anime that has some of the most mind-bending science fiction story ideas, like Psychopass, for that matter. In an hour and 44 minutes, you can't. So you just have to sort of accept all of the weird stuff that's being thrown at you, and just let it go. So that leads us into part 2. What didn't I like about it? Unfortunately, there are a few things. With this crowd in the, behind the scenes producing this stuff, this should be, a chef's kiss, masterpiece, chef's table, full course of amazingness. And it isn't. It's beautiful to look at. It's well acted, well directed. It's, exciting. And it's derivative. It is illogical, and it just doesn't meet it doesn't meet the level of the people that are behind it. So derivative. It's essentially The Little Mermaid. It is, and in fact, that is told as a story in this story. So it's not just that it's an homage to The Little Mermaid. Uda, who has The Little Mermaid read to her at one point, literally tells Hibiki that, he's the prince and she's the mermaid. And then the story plays out basically that way. And so it foreshadows exactly what's going to happen. By the way, Hans Christian Andersen's Little Mermaid, not the Disney version. There's no Sebastian. There's no Ursula. And so you kind of get an idea about where this is going to ultimately go. And that's kind of too bad, because it should be a much more original, innovative kind of work. The magic, because you can't really call this science, of these aliens, and we're starting to really get into spoilery stuff here, but at one point Uda enables Hibiki to see how she experienced everything leading up to the explosion at Tokyo Tower, and then the stuff after that. And it becomes very clear that, whatever this probably multi brain, multi mind, you know, multiple versions of a single consciousness, or whatever you want to call it, came from outer space. And so they set up the rules of how this stuff works, and then just don't really pay that much attention to those rules. They don't explain a lot of the secondary effects of the bubbles, of the explosion, of the thing that's still, the glow that's still engulfing Tokyo Tower. Sometimes gravity gets nullified with contact with things. Sometimes it doesn't. It unfortunately does not hold its own logical power set, for lack of a better term, throughout the course of it. It changes. You wind up with some really just out of left field, silly enemies for another battle parkour team that there's zero explanation for the motivation for doing something absolutely horrific, which turns out okay. They kidnap one of the very few scientists who stayed. Scientists come swarming into the bubble. They study it. They can't figure out what's going on. They stay there for a couple of years, and then most of them leave. One of the very few scientists who stays is also one of the support people in the back of the Blue Blaze battle parkour team, and she's also, obviously very important to the team and to their strategy and to the understanding of what's going on in the bubble. And so this other team just decides to kidnap her and make her part of the next battle parkour match, and it's a capture the flag thing. All of their battle parkour matches are capture the flag. Whichever team gets to the flag first is the winner. And they kidnap her for no reason other than that seems to be their motivation for getting Blue Blaze to really get involved. There seems to be somebody outside that is trying to stop them, but that never gets played out. So the story, and again, as much as I like Urobuchi's work, the story just doesn't make sense. And I think that's because it doesn't have enough time. My guess is that they cut out a lot of explanation or story elements, because he doesn't do exposition a lot of story elements that would have explained things. And they're just, those pages are in a garbage bin somewhere. I don't think they ever even animated that stuff. And so that's unfortunate, because this could have been one of my favorites. It's got some of my absolutely favorite people involved in the creation of it. But the story is just too disjointed. It doesn't make sense on itself, and it's too derivative. The world concept is kind of derivative. Tokyo locked off behind, in this case, a bubble, but it's been a wall. It's been other things. The battle parkour is just a different version of an awful lot of other aerial, sport fighting anime that have been out there. Most recently, I guess, Skate the Infinity. And it is too similar to too many things that are out there. And at its core, the fact that it is essentially the Little Mermaid, set in a science fiction-y, mystical sort of Japan, not mystical, but science fiction-y, supernatural sort of Japan, not post-apocalypse, but kind of dystopian future. It's still the Little Mermaid. It's still almost beat for beat at its core, the primary elements, that story. And there's the one thing that really, really bothers me about this. So Hibiki starts out, he's always wearing headphones. And you eventually find out, you find out pretty quickly that when he takes the headphones off, he has what in the anime they described as auditory hypersensitivity disorder. And in that case, honestly, in a way, it's kind of derivative, although they flip-flop the problem, of a silent voice. You've got somebody with auditory issues. Idiocratic future. That's you know what? That's kind of an interesting way to put it, Ivan. I like that. It's an idiocratic future. So he has this audio hypersensitivity problem, which is why he's wearing headphones. And they show, as a child, when he was young, I mean, he would literally just collapse, and his mother would have to try to, protect him and carry him away. If they were just walking down the street and waiting at a train crossing, and the train, screeches, and there's cars going by, he can't handle it. And that is actually a part of why he is connected to Uta. It turns out when he was in Tokyo Tower, when the explosion happened, or when the bubble falls started, and he heard Uta singing as a bubble. And he's the only one who could, and so they make a connection, and that connection is what actually destroys Tokyo Tower. So all of that works really well. They treat it pretty honestly and straightforward, and it's a cool idea. And then the outcome of, let's go back to where was it? This scene here. You notice he's not wearing his headphones. I didn't have any pictures of him with the headphones, but you notice he's not wearing the headphones. They fall off, and he sort of doesn't pay attention. And then he doesn't wear them from that point on, and they make it clear in, a bunch of people are celebrating their victory over the, silly bad guy battle parkour team around him. And one of the young kid, the kid with the shaved side head in the picture of the group in the boat, suddenly stops and he apologizes for making all the noise, around Hibiki, and he just, you're just noisy as usual. Falling in love isn't going to solve the problem of somebody with a condition like hypersensitivity. That is pretty insulting to the people who suffer from that problem. I really kind of can't believe that they did that. That literally all Hibiki had to do was meet Uta and fall in love with her, and suddenly a debilitating condition that he had from birth, essentially, just goes away. Implying that it was something psychological, that it was some sort of emotional trauma, that whatever it wasn't an actual disorder. And, damn, that's pretty terrible. Again, I really like Urobuchi as a writer, but, boy, did you miss the boat on that one. That's... I just... It boggles my mind that somebody would write something like that would be that dismissive of the people who actually do suffer from auditory hypersensitivity, that have to wear headphones often or all the time to block out all of the stuff that would otherwise, literally drop them to their knees or force them into a dark, quiet room. So that is probably the one thing that really bothered me the most about this. The lost potential, the missed potential, is a bother. It sets up a really interesting world concept, a really interesting non-human things that create this world or lead Earth to the point where it is in this world, and then don't explore them properly, don't consistently deal with the effects that they have on the Earth, and just use that as a backdrop to retell the Little Mermaid. So, I really wish I liked this more than I did. It's beautiful. It's absolutely, it's gorgeous to look at. So themes, tone, and messages. I've already mentioned the big sort of message that bothers the hell out of me, that love can cure congenital hearing problems. Okay. And the theme is the Little Mermaid. It's been done before. And in fact, this version of it, the Hans Christian Andersen, she goes back to the sea. In this version, she reverts to, again, spoilers. This is the nature of the show. She reverts back to Bubbles. And when she does that, she basically spells out the theme of the story, is that the human heart is one of the defining characteristics of the human heart is feeling loss. And she tells this to Hibiki, that she discovered that the human heart is love, but it's also loss. And then, in the denouement, after all of this happens and the bubble has disappeared, the bubble around Tokyo has disappeared, although for some reason a lot of the bubbles themselves are still sort of floating around, but no rocks or parts of buildings are anymore. Anyway, another one of the inconsistencies that bothers me, but they undercut that theme by having Hibiki, the last thing you see, he's doing some parkour, sort of training, because they train a lot, and a bubble floats up next to him and makes some sounds that are like Uda's singing, and he looks at it and smiles, and it continues to follow him. So Uda's not gone. He didn't lose her. She's just a bubble that follows him around now. You literally had your secondary main character explain to the other main character what the theme of your movie is, and then undercut it. Because he doesn't have loss. He has her with him all the time. Just, he can't hug her. Well, I guess he could. Anyway. So, yeah, that's the theme. Except it doesn't turn out to really be the theme. So, ultimately, what do I give this thing? So first off, a recommendation. I would say it's worth a watch if you like Wit Studios' work, if you like that sort of parkour, action-y, beautifully animated, beautifully directed, very exciting kind of action. And you can kind of turn the story off, because ultimately it doesn't make sense. So yeah, I would give it a qualified recommendation if that's the kind of person you are. And it is beautiful. Again, it's gorgeous to look at, and it's fantastically directed. Scale of 1 to 10, I can't give this any more than a 6, and I'm probably being generous because of both the director and the writer, and just their background and the things that I know that they've done that are absolutely some of my favorite. So, yeah, a 6 out of 10. Are you going to feel bad if you miss it? No. Will you enjoy parts of it if you watch it? Sure. So, there you go. There's my recommendation. All right, before we get on to talking about any of the stuff that we've got coming up, second and last promo is about our Patreon page. If you would like to go to patreon.com/nerdcaliber, we'd love to have you check it out. We have 3 tiers. $2 is the lowest tier. It helps us get more content by going to more cons. And we'd love to have you. So if you feel like it, please do check out patreon.com/nerdcaliber. Upcoming tomorrow is, of course, Nerd Week Live. We missed it last week. I was ill. I'm sorry. I apologize. That happens. But Nerd Week Live, we've already got some pretty interesting stuff, including carryovers from what should have been last week. I'm going to do a lot of triage, so it's not going to be an enormous list, because it could literally be 2 weeks worth of stuff. So there's some stuff from last week that are probably just going to get dropped. But it will be a sizable list and some really interesting things. Not the least of which was another gaming purchase that happened just today. So, and then Thursday, our full fat spoiler chat is Moon Knight. The last episode drops on Wednesday. So if you have not been watching it, you've got, basically 3 days to watch 5 episodes until, or 6 episodes until our show. But yeah, we'll be doing Moon Knight on Full Fat Spoiler Chat. Next Monday is No Nerd Caliber, and I should know what that is because it would be awfully helpful for me to have that right in front of me as opposed to clicking on all of these links and looking it up. And it is going to be... that's right. It's going to be our top 3 pirate stories from any media because May 12th's Full Fat Spoiler Chat will be Our Flag Means Death. So yeah, check out any of those shows. Upcoming cons, I will be at Double Midnight Comics for Free Comic Book Day this Saturday. So I'll be taking pictures of the contestants for the costume contest. They're back to having a big cash prize costume contest. And then at the end of the month, May 27th through the 29th, I always say that wrong. May 27th through the 29th is Anime Boston. I will be running the photo department. Nerd Caliber is teaming up with Anime Boston to help manage their photo department. So if you are looking for where to get your free photos of your cosplay from Nerd Caliber or from Anime Boston, because they do free photos too, we will all be together in the Cosplay Photography Suite, room 102. We will have... changed my mind. We will have a table out in Community Row, but we will not be doing photography there. That's going to basically just be a base for our team, our press team. So, room 102, come get your cosplay photographs that will go up on Nerd Caliber and Anime Boston's website. And we will see you there or at another upcoming con or at an upcoming show. In the meantime, folks, please do stay safe.